Taylor Decker's on my All-22 fantasy team, by the way.
Stop it. Nobody cares.
Taylor,
I don't care, and I'm in the league.
I'm just trying to hype up the future of fantasy football here. They told me we could hype it up.
Nobody cares about your fantasy team. That's one of the
it's
cardinal
my
rules
way
of broadcasting. Regardless of the medium, they don't care.
So the strategic component to this game is through the roof.
Your predictions, right? Your forecasting in fantasy football into how good is this player?
It's gonna change the industry.
Yeah, I moved to the old town where it goes down. Look at me now. I wrote my goals down. I hold it down. Made myself proud. Say, look at me now.
Hello and welcome to the All-22 podcast. My name is Chris Lombardi, and I'm joined by Bobby Acker, Ray Cotto, and PFF's Trevor Sikkema. Trevor, it's so great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining.
I appreciate you guys having me on. This is fun. When you asked me to do the little verses this week, I was very excited for it. So I didn't even know that was going to come with a podcast appearance. So that was an added bonus for it. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Maybe it'll get you a T-shirt or something in the end.
Look, I'm trying to get as much free stuff as I possibly can in life. So whatever you guys want to throw my way, just know that I'm always open for it.
Absolutely. And for everybody listening in, Trevor is at Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter, and he's the host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. So that's where you can find him at. And like he said, he is the next person challenging us in our All-22 Versus campaign. Trevor, tell us a little bit about essentially how did you find out about All-22? You know, you drafted with us, but had you heard of us before then?
No, I actually hadn't. And funny enough, so I started with PFF at the beginning of last year. And I believe my moving truck was still in the PFF parking lot on the night that you guys were in the office doing the big draft that we were doing last year. So Austin Gale was like, hey, actually, do you want to come to this? We're all like doing this cool draft. It's like fantasy football, but even better because it's like total teams. Like you get offensive linemen involved, like all that. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, it sounds awesome. So that was actually the first time that I had heard about you guys, and obviously got to meet a bunch of you that night. But it's a fun concept, man. It's really cool. And it's exactly the way that I was just saying it right there. It's like fantasy football, but much more real, much more true to the game. So it's been a lot of fun to be involved with it. It was fun to watch on draft night. And yeah, I'm excited to get to talk about my team here that I picked.
Yeah, that's great. And we're so happy you got to draft with us. That night was so much fun. Got to drink some beers, have a little barbecue.
We did.
Chris Collinsworth even made a celebrity pick. I don't know if you remember that, Trevor. I think it was – does anybody remember?
Who's picked it? It was Trayvon Diggs. It was the polarizing Trayvon Diggs.
Oh. Before the breakout.
But it was like a throwaway pick. It was just like, yeah, just pick it because I don't know who else.
He thought pretty hard about it.
Yeah. I hope
Whatever,
it wasn't
worked out for him.
Yeah. I hope it wasn't apparent to you, Trevor, but we were nervous as hell throughout that whole draft, but couldn't tell, right?
Oh, no, not at all. You guys seemed like the absolute experts in the room, and it was intimidating. Everybody sitting at the table. It was like a Madden fantasy draft, but like in real life with all your friends. Like it was so cool. I'm so used to doing fantasy football drafts, but I don't want to say it's overplayed because I still play fantasy football all the time. Let's be real. But it's just like it was a different feel, a more in-depth feel. And it was a really cool experience getting to do that. Especially, I'd encourage anybody out there, if you get to do it all in person, like have a big draft party about it, that's the fun way to do it. Because then it's like, oh, this person picked somebody. You could yell at them from across the table. And it's a great time. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got yelled at by Neil quite a few times.
Panic picking Titus Howard in like the 22nd round or something with 10 other people in the room. It's a bad experience. You don't want to be that guy.
Like you never think about it, right? We criticize GMs when they're drafting all the time, and we're like, oh, how could you make this pick? What are you doing? And then they put you on the shot clock, and you see that counter going down, and you're like, this guy. Okay, so but that's the fun of it.
It is.
Exactly.
It is. And Trevor, before we jump into it, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about what you do for PFF?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. So right now I've done a handful of things over the last couple of years. Last year, I was the host for our college football and NFL pregame shows. That was a big thing that I did. And then also doing a lot of feature articles that we had connecting with NFL players and college football players, draft prospects, everything, which is something that I have continued to do for PFF and really love to do. I also help handle a lot of their NFL draft stuff under Mike Renner, working with him, making the draft board and the draft preview magazine and the final draft magazine and all that stuff. So that's something that I absolutely love to do. And then this year, aside from also hosting the podcast, which you guys shouted out and I appreciate, we have a daily show that we do now on YouTube at 11 a.m. Eastern called It's Just Football. It's just an hour-long show every single day where we're chit-chatting about the recent news of the day, some of the best social clips that you see on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, but we also do a lot of really fun stuff, and we have a lot of fun previewing the upcoming matchups and talking about what we just saw over the weekend. And so that's a lot of fun as well. So I'm kind of all over the place, but basically anywhere there is a camera or a microphone turned on for PFF, I'm always trying to get involved in it. So it's fun.
You mentioned Austin before, and I always felt that Austin was kind of the voice of PFF. And with his leaving, I feel like there's a big void, but I feel like you've kind of filled that, at least for me. I don't know if everybody else feels that way, but I feel that way.
Oh, well, I appreciate you saying that. Austin is one of my favorite people in the world. And so obviously he's working with the Ringer now, and I'm super happy with everything that he is getting to be able to do over there. He's a West Coast dude, and this job also allowed him to get out of Cincinnati, move back to a little bit closer of what his roots were. So I know that he was happy about that. But look, I don't think, to give as much of a coach speak as I can, quote Coach Boone from Remember the Titans, cannot replace an Austin Gale, cannot replace a Gary Bertier. But it's just one of those things that with Austin leaving, we've had a couple of other opportunities to step up and do some different things in content, and I've been very happy to do that.
Great. Well, let's jump into it. So like we said, you're going to be our next competitor in the All-22 versus matchup series. You have some, you're following up Sam Monson and a couple other really good guys, but I think we beat Sam guys, didn't we? So Trevor, you got a lot of pressure here to redeem PFF's name. And let's start with your package that you chose on offense. You chose 21 personnel. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why you did that?
Honestly, when I looked at this lineup and I've got the flexibility to pick either, a second running back, a second tight end, or a third wide receiver, I really like the matchup that Kenneth Walker has right now, the running back from Seattle. He had a fantastic week last week. I was super impressed with not just how well he played, but also the way in which he played. I'm sure you guys saw the highlight. The confidence for this dude to come in and do like that fake stiff arm move. He's barely even playing in the NFL, and he's doing stuff that you'd be doing in NFL Street, and that just shows the kind of confidence he's playing with. He was the Doak Walker Award winner last year in college football. So for him to step on the field, immediately kind of take that role. And you got to remember this too. The team was already blocking really well for Rashad Penny before he went down. So I had faith that Kenneth Walker was going to be able to come in and be strong right away. He's going up against a Chargers team that can be susceptible to the run. So I like that matchup, but I really wanted to get Austin Ekeler in there as well. So I ended up getting Ekeler in there as my second running back because of how well he has been playing. A little slow start to the year, but flip side, it's both of those running backs in that game, and I think that they are going to be used plenty for different reasons. I think the Chargers are really leaning on Austin Ekeler, especially with Keenan Allen out. But even when Keenan Allen comes back, I think that he's going to be a lion's share kind of a guy in that system. So whether it's catching passes out of the backfield or getting carries, I wanted to get Ekeler on the team, and I wanted to get Walker on the team too, so that's why I went with that.
Yeah, I love the Kenneth Walker pick, and it kind of leads right into the question I had for you about that. So you mentioned gets kind of a soft matchup with the LA Chargers, right? At least from a PFF grading perspective, 58.5 run defense grade and a 46.1 team tackling grade. And like I saw, like the last couple of weeks, nobody has broken more tackles, at least from the rookie running backs, than Kenneth Walker. I think I saw that was a PFF stat too. But I know kind of a limited sample size here, but are you comfortable saying that Kenneth Walker is looking like probably the best running back in this draft class? Like, where do you rank him in this draft class as far as running backs?
Well, I mean, Dameon Pierce has been fantastic as well, right? And so I think it's got to be those two guys at the top. They've really been able to show their stuff, and there have been a couple of other really great backs too. I think Isaiah Pacheco has shown some really great stuff. Rashad White in Tampa Bay as well. I'm sure I'm forgetting people because running backs can pop up and play well. It feels like out of nowhere for some teams, but there has been a good crop of running backs that have come out of the draft this past year. But those two dudes are definitely standing out right away. Pierce, you figured that he would start to get that RB1 treatment in Houston just because there's not a lot of other playmakers where the ball can go outside of Brandon Cooks. That's the case, and he's already shown that he is worth that kind of return on investment. Same thing with Walker. And these are guys that are running with a lot of confidence. I think the blocking is holding up pretty well for him, even though Dameon Pierce has had to have a handful of forced missed tackles to make things happen. It's those two dudes at the top, but I would say I'd still give it to Dameon Pierce right now just because he has been more impactful over a larger sample size of games.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think Breece Hall probably in that conversation too.
Oh, right. Yes. 100%. Yep.
Yeah, but I love Kenneth Walker. Love what we've seen from a small sample size. When I saw he was one of your picks, I was like, damn, like kind of still one of the guys that we wanted to put on our roster, but not going to duplicate our picks here. But great pick.
So we talked enough about the ground game here. It feels like I'm interested in your selection of Dak Prescott because going back to last year, we saw Russell Wilson start out really hot, suffer that injury, come back after about a month or so, and just wasn't the same. And now, I mean, this year, that's a whole different story, and he's got his own struggles to deal with. But did it cross your mind at all that it may be a bit of a slow start for Dak as he returns from his thumb injury, or are you just looking at it saying, hey, the Lions give up, just tons of points that you can move the ball on them? What's your thought process there, and does that scare you at all?
Yeah, I mean, the determining factor for this was definitely them going up against the Lions. The Lions have really struggled on defense this year, and I didn't think that it was going to be this bad. I feel like the Lions are still a year-ish away, maybe 2 years on the defensive side of the ball till they really have all the guys that they would want to play at a high level. But, man, it looks ugly for them this year. They're coming off the bye, so you would hope that they've got a good game plan, 2 weeks of really just targeting one team and what they do. For Dan Campbell's sake, and I always like rooting for Dan Campbell, I hope the Lions are playing better. But on the flip side, man, I think Dak could have probably played a little bit earlier. And that is what gives me the faith that with him coming in now, he's going to be okay. Because you never know in the NFL, right? These guys come back and it's like, yep, he's playing. He's good to go. He's good to go. Is he really good to go? Like, did you rush him back? Because every week is so paramount and important. I feel as though because Cooper Rush was playing as well as he was, it wasn't looking catastrophic for Dallas. They were racking up wins. They were okay giving Dak the appropriate time to come back from this injury and really feel good. So with that being the case, I didn't have as much reservation as I would have if I really felt like they were rushing Dak back. I don't think that's the case. He's going to look a lot better than he did at the beginning of the year before he got that injury. Dallas's offense and Dallas as a team, I think, is a lot more solidified than they were at the beginning of the year as well. So combination of those things, having faith in where Dak is with the injury, the offensive weapons that he has to throw to, and the opponent that he's going up against really has not shown us much in coverage so far this year. So that's why I ended up going with Dak.
Solid pick. And to summarize so far, so your quarterback choice was Dak Prescott, your two running backs, Kenneth Walker and Austin Eckler, and then wide receiver Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams leads us to tight end. Bobby, I think you had a question on that one.
Yeah, Dan Bellinger. So Trevor, I think we talked about it when we had met in Cincinnati. I'm a huge Giants fan, right? So I love Dan Bellinger so far. It's a breath of fresh air going from Evan Ingram now to Daniel Bellinger. He's graded really well in 5 of the 6 weeks that he's played. You just heard Gronk's comments in the past week that Dable was his favorite tight ends coach or the best tight ends coach he'd ever had throughout his career. So I think that's really inspiring, right? I think from my perspective, I don't think it's a fluke, this grading, especially, it's especially impressive because, he's done it in his rookie season, right? We've seen really good tight ends come out like Kyle Pitts, obviously a different type of tight end, but come out and really not grade so well. So what do you see from Daniel Bellinger? Do you think he's legit? Do you think this is going to be, a good dynasty guy to have in your All-22 leagues?
Dude, he's so solid. For tight ends who have played at least 100 offensive snaps, he has the 4th highest grade, only behind Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and David Njoku. He's 4th. He's the next guy there. And his game is so all-around solid. 75.9 offensive grade, 76.5 receiving grade. And then pass blocking and run blocking, it's in the high and low 60s. Like, the floor, if you will, for Daniel Bellinger is so high. And honestly, I went with this pick because it was almost like I wanted a solid guy. Like, I wanted to I wasn't like shooting for the moon. I wasn't shooting for a guy who was like, okay, who has the chance to like score 2 touchdowns or something. I just wanted a steady player who I knew was going to get a solid amount of grades for me. And Daniel Bellinger has been able to show that he's a true all-around tight end. Tight end's a really difficult position to make the transition to the NFL. I know there's a lot of different shapes and sizes of tight ends and usage, and some guys who are more receivers get to play a little bit more receiver of a position. They'll play him in the slot rather than demand that they're in line a little bit more. But when you are what Daniel Bellinger is, which is a guy who can do it all, sometimes it's really tough to get on the field because it's not like you separate yourself from these veterans that are probably on the team. So far, Daniel Bellinger is leading the Giants in snaps. Like, they trust this guy to do everything, not just in the receiving snaps, but also in line when he's blocking, and it's just that kind of reliability as well. So I've really seen great all-around game from Bellinger. It's been fantastic to see him hit the ground running, if you will. And it's just not often that you get a tight end show things their rookie season when it's not like, okay, you are a specialized player. You do this really well. Like, you block really well. That's why you're on the field. You're going to be a second or third tight end in 12 and 13 personnel. That's how you're getting on the field. Or you are basically a big wide receiver. You are a slot wide receiver. That's how you're getting on the field. They're using Bellinger everywhere, man. So I think that's ultimately what the deciding factor was for me, is that he just impacts the game in so many different areas in such a high-profile way that his grades aren't going to be low because of it. If he suffers in one area, he's probably going to be good in another. So that's ultimately why I went with him.
It's a super interesting offseason, too, because the Giants brought in guys like Ricky Seals-Jones, a couple other veterans, and they kind of came and went. You never really even saw them in the preseason either. And they put all this faith in Daniel Bellinger, a 4th-round pick. And, as a Giants fan, you're thinking, what's going on here? Can we really put this much on a 4th-round pick? Why do you think so many teams overlooked him for those first 3 rounds?
Well, I think it was one of those. It sounds boring, right? The whole reason why I just praised him is also maybe a reason why you overlook him. You go, yeah, he's solid at everything. And you go like, yeah, okay, like he's solid. But then there's a lot of other tight ends that you go, yeah, but he could be a red zone touchdown scorer for us. Or, yeah, but he could be a big-time blocking eraser or whatever it is. And sometimes those guys who are just solid in a lot of different areas get overlooked because they don't specialize, because they don't catch people's eye, because they don't make the highlights. Ultimately, I think that's probably why he was a little bit overlooked. And, hey, great for him to go to a great tight ends coach, a great spot where he has an opportunity to play, and he's without a doubt making the most of it.
I'm going to hype All-22 a little bit, but I feel like your answer is part of our game, right? Like it's what separates us a little bit from traditional fantasy. People need to go in traditional fantasy and they have to get a tight end that scores touchdowns. And if there's a great tight end out there that can block really well, but doesn't get 100 yards a game, he's essentially worthless, right? So something that we do a little bit differently, and I hope that you enjoy that aspect of it.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Moving to tackle, so you picked Andrew Thomas, another Giant. I'm not going to talk about the Giants too much because we do way too much on this podcast.
Yeah, we do.
we'll talk a little bit about Ryan Ramczyk, though, and it's more not a question as a comment. Just I love the pick. The model of consistency. He hasn't had a single year of his career with a PF grade under 80, and then this year he starts it off with above average grades in every single game. He's going against the Cardinals, 29th pass rushing grade in PFF system. Seems like a layup, right?
Yeah, no, it was too easy of a pick here. Obviously, we in this exercise we can't pick the very obvious, very top guys who are at the top of their position, and Ramczyk was kind of sitting there as this next obvious player, especially because of the matchup. Offensive tackles can sometimes go up against really great pass rushers, and sometimes you just don't love the matchup. I love the matchup. So this was an opportunity where I love the matchup, love the player. It's Thursday Night Football, so that's anytime that's the case, it gets a little bit risky, I guess. But there's nobody on Arizona's defensive line that scares me. Nobody. Not that Ryan Ramczyk can't handle. So that was kind of an easy pick for me there. And then Andrew Thomas, highest graded offensive lineman that we have so far this year. And I will say this. I had Andrew Thomas as my offensive tackle 1 in that 2021 class, and it was not looking good for the start of his career, and he was getting whooped, and I was like, damn, am I gonna whiff on him? Is this gonna be a bust by me? But we came back, we held the faith. My guy's incredible this year, and it's just he's putting together a lot of those things that you saw at Georgia. He has those quick feet. He's got that athleticism. He's got that agility. And I think the strength of the NFL really caught him by surprise, where he was being a little bit too finesse. Maybe he was used to being that at the college level, and those NFL defensive linemen really surprised him with how much they could impose their will on him with strength and really good technique. And I just think over that year and a half that he kind of took his lumps, he also learned. And we're seeing the dividends of it now. So with Andrew Thomas not on that not pickable list, I have to bet on the guy who's been the highest scorer from the offensive tackle group so far this year.
Really glad you brought it back to him, even though Chris tried to gloss over it. I'm really
well,
glad
I
you
had
did that.
to look. I did it in a little bit of a selfish way because I got to pump up that I had him as offensive tackle 1, and now he's good.
I had him as offensive tackle 1 too, and it's one of those things people don't think about, right? Like when an offensive lineman that you really like gets drafted to a team that doesn't necessarily do a great job building offensive linemen, right? Like rookie offensive linemen up. Mm-hmm. It's a little scary, right? You think about that for other positions, but not necessarily the offensive line. When Andrew Thomas got picked there, I kind of changed my tune a little bit and went, Tristan Wirfs is playing with a Hall of Fame quarterback. His job's going to be a lot easier than Andrew Thomas's. But to your point, I'm so happy to see that he's been successful since then.
Me too.
Guard picks Joe Thuney and Zach Martin. Jumping to center, Ray, I think you had a question there.
Yeah, so my whole thing about center is I feel like there's not very many at all good ones in the league today. Whenever we do this exercise each week and we're looking at centers to pick, or maybe it's just me, but if I'm looking at a center to select for the week, I hate them all. I have a very tough time finding one that I'm comfortable saying, yep, here's my guy, I'm going to roll with him. So what is it about Ethan Posick or for this week? And then just in general, do you feel that same sort of vibe with centers overall, that it's really just sort of a down cycle for them in the league right now?
Yeah, I mean, center's a tough position. But look, the reason why I go with Posick is because, you guys wouldn't let me pick Joel Bitonio. You wouldn't let me pick Wyatt Teller. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick the guy who plays next to him. I'm going to put him in center. But no, center is just, I mean, it's a tough position because defensive lines are getting so creative with how they're going to attack the pocket. And you go up against these interior defensive linemen who are just these absolute freak athletes, right? I think that, there were times in the NFL where certainly you get some incredible 3 technique players who are unbelievable on the interior. Warren Sapp is a guy who immediately comes to mind as somebody who wreaked havoc in a couple of decades ago when he was playing. But really, I think that you see it more and more now is these guys who are uber athletes in the middle who not only have that size, but also a speed profile. So playing center is tough, man. You're the one who's obviously got a job before the job where you've got to get that ball into the quarterback's hands, whether it's in the gun or whether they're right behind you. That's something you have to think about. So not only do you have to get that ball where it is, and if you're playing in the gun, that takes a little bit more precision because it's not somebody who's right behind you. You got to fire the ball behind you. You got to fire it behind you accurately, and then you've got to get the hands up. You got to start to get the feet chopping. And sometimes it's tough, I think, for centers when you see lower grades for centers. I think sometimes it's tough to read the offensive line the way that you need to, or the guys next to you, depending on how guys are coming at the pocket. So whether it's a late blitz, whether it's a stunt, whatever it is, center's often a position where they're trying to help out in different ways. And if you guess wrong, sometimes that could look really bad on you. Somebody could be coming up through the middle. We know that teams love to overload the A gap, and that ultimately falls on the center. So the reason why I go with Ethan Posick is because I have faith in the guys that are next to him, man. Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller are 2 of the best guards in the NFL. And so, he's playing next to 2 of the best. It's not like one of those guys is going to be where they're not supposed to be or overmatched. Therefore, Posick's got to think about going over to help out or compromising where his kind of little zone is within the offensive line. So I just think that it's tougher for centers nowadays because of the unique athletes that defensive linemen have across the NFL. But it's always going to be a chemistry-based thing. And I think picking the centers that are going to perform the best often goes to who their guards are next to them. And I think that Ethan Posick's got 2 really good ones.
Love it. Taking notes.
Any strategy picking a kicker or a punter?
Yeah, Harrison Butker kicked a 62-yard field goal that could have been good from 75, in which Steph Curry just turned around and didn't even need to watch it go in. And the second I saw that, I knew that that's who I was picking for this week.
Love
that's all I needed to see.
Yeah, okay. D-line, Bobby.
We picked our punter just because of his nickname, the Scottish Hammer. Just so you know, we picked him like 3 times in this series.
Wait, who is the Scottish Hammer? Who's the Scottish Hammer?
Jamie Gillan, the Giants punter. He actually got stuck in England last week because his passport was like there's like some problem with his passport. I don't know. But
Wow.
yeah, pretty fun story. Well, not fun for him.
Maybe extend
Defense.
vacation.
So you're in a 3-4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my strategy is I'm almost always in a 3-4. Sometimes I'll go nickel depending on like where my depth is. Never go 4-3 because I don't trust linebackers. What's your strategy here? Is it a week to week thing? Is it set it and forget it thing?
No, I think that it's a week to week thing. It just, again, it all kind of depends on how you drafted your team. But for this week, when I have the slate clean and I get to pick guys, I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, if anybody couldn't tell from my Twitter handle being Tampa Bay Trey. And I had to watch Cam Hayward absolutely baptize Luke Gedeke last week into the ground. And so, he's going up now against a Dolphins team that Dolphins interior ain't that great. So I think that they've been okay at times, but just as a unit, they haven't been good overall. So I think a veteran defensive lineman in Cam Hayward, who has been one of the best in the NFL, I think he's going to have his way again. I think it's going to be another really solid game for him. And then on the flip side of kind of that story that I was telling, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going up against the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers stink, but there's some good players who are playing really well despite what the win-loss is and the offensive execution. On the defensive side of the ball, Derrick Brown's playing really good football. And Derrick Brown, a really high pick when he came out of the NFL draft, his run defense grade has been really great this year. Anytime you have consistently good run defense grades, that's normally something that continues to be pretty steady, especially throughout a season. I don't think it's too cyclical when it's as high as it has been for Derrick Brown. And he is going up against backup offensive linemen. He's going up against Luke Gedeke from the Buccaneers, up against Robert Hainsey, Shaq Mason sometimes if he'll be on that side. But I think that that's another matchup where I don't expect Derrick Brown to get pushed around too much. And then the last one, the reason why I ended up going with 3 down defensive linemen, dude, Quinnen Williams has been fantastic over the last couple of weeks. He has been getting, I got to say this about Quinnen, a little disappointing when he started in the NFL that rookie year, but he has been getting steadily better ever since. And this year we're seeing it really come on. We're seeing shades of what we were able to see, that unblockable ability like he was at Alabama. And this past week that he had versus the Packers, he had an unbelievable game. I know his initial PFF grade wasn't the best, but actually they went back and looked at it, and they actually changed the grade to kind of reflect how well he was able to play, and it turned into an 80s grade. So he has been absolutely fantastic so far this season, and with him being available, I had to also get him on my team. So I'm pretty happy about the matchup guys that I have there this week.
Yeah, that's a really scary group of interior defensive linemen. Quinnen Williams is a guy that the three of us always pull for. I mean, we're not Jets fans, but he's just a guy that you want to pull for. Derrick Brown's actually the guy that I wanted to ask you about, right? So 61 PFF grade in 2020, 64.4 PFF grade in 2021. Like you said, took him some time to sort of come around. And actually, before we actually had that draft with you in Cincinnati, we had actually been playing this game, All-22, in an Excel sheet, right? And our first rookie draft, I took Derrick Brown with a very high pick because I was so excited about him. Had no idea how long it takes for defensive interiors to transition into the NFL. So first 2 years, I'm thinking, I got egg on my face. I just missed. Like we made this game, and I'm not even good at it right now. So kind of frustrating. But now this year, it looks like it's starting to click. You mentioned his run defense grade, even his pass rush grade isn't that bad. So what do you see that's changed with him? What sort of clicked in his game?
I just think that he's
now jumped to a 90 grade.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the game's coming to him a little bit easier. And I had heard from some people that Derrick Brown, there was a chance that he was going to struggle for a little bit in the NFL because, guys, you got to remember this too. Derrick Brown was an incredibly high recruit. He was incredible during his time at Auburn. This kid was just physically gifted. And he went through high school football. He went through college football. Not to say that he didn't work hard. I'm definitely not saying that whatsoever. But he was more talented than these guys around him. And when you get to the NFL, that's only the case for like the rare cases when you truly have a head up talent-wise against your competition. So I think that Derrick Brown got bullied a little bit. He was somebody who, when I watched him in college, he was somebody who would get out of his stance very quickly. He would just pop up. He would not really care about the leverage he had because he was so strong. He was so quick. It didn't really matter. He was still able to penetrate, do what he wanted to, offensive lineman that he was going up against in college. That's just not the case in the NFL. I think that when he started to do what he was normally doing, popping out of his leverage, smaller guards, smaller centers are like, all right, this is a free win for me. They stay low, they get the hands up, and they start bulldozing you back. And all of a sudden, it's just like, whoa, haven't seen this guy get pushed back like this really ever. And I think that was a little bit of the journey for Derrick Brown, and you're seeing it more now. The recognition of what offensive linemen are doing, whether they're trying to wall you off or whether they're going for a cut block or how they're trying to reach you or whatever. It just seems like Derrick Brown is much more aware now of what the other offensive lineman is doing. It feels like he has definitely studied that other side of the ball, really taken that to heart, knowing what offensive linemen are about to do against him. And his own technique. I feel like he's starting a little bit lower, staying a little bit lower, continuing to have that leverage, and then that natural physical ability, that speed, that rare size and speed combination is also showing up outside of that technique too. So, I'm a big draft guy. I love the NFL draft. But we, as a society, often forget how long it takes for these guys. And we look at the players who really succeed right away and we go, why can't everybody do that? And what we really should be doing is appreciating those guys who are able to stand out as rookies and just appreciating them for what they are, not taking it away from somebody else, whether it's Andrew Thomas, whether it's Derrick Brown, no matter who it is, it takes time. Quinnen Williams, it takes time for these guys to acclimate as pros. I used to do a podcast when I was down in Tampa with a guy named Ian Beckles. He played guard for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And we used to talk about the draft all the time, and he would always see how excited I would get about the Bucs rookies. And I was like, oh, this rookie could contribute in this way. Like, he could play this role. And he would look at me and he'd laugh and he'd be like, Trevor, rookies are supposed to suck. You're out here telling me like a 4th round, 5th round pick's going to contribute to this team. And he's like, I'm telling you, math is on my side that they are not going to contribute early on. It's going to take them time. They've got to learn how to be pros. So ultimately, I think that was the lesson with Derrick Brown. He just had to learn how to go from being a college star to a pro. And it's taken a little bit of time, but now we're definitely seeing the rewards.
Yeah, at the end of the day, these are 21-year-old kids.
100%.
I mean, now being 30 years old, you kind of understand 21's pretty young. But for your sake as a Bucs fan and for our sake in this matchup, hopefully Derrick Brown has a down week this week. But with that, I guess we'll move on to edge rushers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and on the edge, you picked my guy, Rashan Gary. And he's got a tough matchup, though, right? So he's playing Washington. Washington tackles have been playing well. So my question to you is Rashan Gary officially matchup proof?
I certainly picked him as if he was. When you look at Rashan Gary, I think this Packers team as a whole really struggles against the run, but he doesn't. He is, I think, the only defensive player, or maybe it's defensive line, maybe it's box players, that has a run defense grade above 70. So he's giving you that baseline of good run defense. It's not a grade that's going to really tank his performance. And also he's flourishing into a really great pass rusher. I think when you look at Washington's offensive tackles, whether it's Charles Leno, Sam Cosmi, or whoever they've been able to rotate in there, I think from time to time, they've shown flashes. Like I thought Leno had a fantastic first week up against the Jags, but he hasn't really replicated that good of a performance since. Cosmi's had a couple of games where he's really struggled. So it's an up and down thing. And anytime you're changing quarterbacks too, that's also a risk because you're not thinking about, okay, how often does Carson Wentz leave in the pocket versus how often this guy's leaving the pocket? Do I have to wall him off a little bit more to the outside? Do I have to be more susceptible to inside moves, depending on what the quarterback is, his mobility? Taylor Heineke's a guy who likes to escape the pocket. So how does that affect how well the offensive tackles do their job? Rashan Gary, we know he's a fantastic athlete. And so I think we're getting to that point where week in and week out, Rashan Gary is showing us that he is a all-around edge player and a guy who can really get you some good grades no matter where it is.
If you had to put him inside or outside of the top 5, where does he land?
Oh my gosh, come on, Chris.
Top 5 like edge players?
Edge players, yeah.
No, he's outside of the top 5.
Okay.
Thank you. He's got to be outside of the top 5 of edge players.
Damn it. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to move to linebacker with DeMario Davis that you picked. And Bobby mentioned it before. We started doing this in Excel like 3 years ago, and he was actually a guy I picked at the time, thinking that I only had him for a year. He was 31 years old. He's now 33 with an 86.3 season grade. He's playing 60 to 70 snaps a game. Just how special is what he's doing, and what do you like about him against the Cardinals this week?
Oh man, he's fantastic. Davis has been so good for so long. He's just a player who has been a core player for that position, and that's why I picked him. I picked him again because he's a steady Eddie, and and I don't even say that as a insult. I say that as something where he has had steady play, and it's been elite play. He's been damn near all pro execution wise for years, half a decade. And as a Bucs fan, I get a good look at DeMario Davis every single year, and he just continues to play incredibly well. That position, playing at the center of defenses, is so difficult. I think that people underrate what linebackers have to do. Yes, there are a lot of linebackers who can do certain things for you, whether it's pass rush, guys who are a little bit better in coverage, guys who are tacklers. But to be what DeMario Davis is for the New Orleans Saints is different. The leader, the signal caller, the centerpiece, where the zone defense begins, whether he's rushing the pocket, whether he's dropping back, whether it's different kinds of communication, whether it's a feel during a play, the experience, what he has seen, all of that is just, I don't mean for that to go underappreciated. He is one of the best linebackers in the NFL. He has been for a long time, and kind of needed to give him his props here with a good matchup against the Cardinals this week.
Love it. Corner, you took Jack Jones. Everybody's talking about Jack Jones, right?
I too.
PFF's highest grade corner since he's been starting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is asking the same question. Is he a product of the Patriot system, or is he really a good, strong player that would be successful anywhere?
No, I think that he's got traits that would allow him to succeed anywhere. He's a smaller corner, so you're not going to want to play him in press very often. You're going to want him in off coverage, some sort of zone. And he's shown that he can be fantastic when that's the case, because I think he's got great eyes for the backfield, feels when the ball is about to be released, understands how to look at wide receivers out of a peripheral, where they're breaking, when the ball might be coming their way. And I think probably my favorite trait of Jack Jones is his feet, his footwork. This dude clicks and closes about as fast as anybody else is in the NFL this year. He is playing fantastic. There are a handful of plays where I've watched him put his foot in the ground almost at the exact same time that the wide receiver is putting his foot in the ground to close on, to break on the route where the ball is eventually going to go, and yet he is breaking on where the wide receiver is going. And it's just been extremely impressive to watch. When you have those kinds of instincts, when you are that good in off coverage as a corner, that's when you really start to get interceptions. It's tough when you get these man coverage corners, especially guys who play in press, who playing with your back to the ball, very, very valuable. But it doesn't always translate into interceptions, because that requires you to have elite timing and anticipation with turning your head around, turning your hips around, and then going to find the ball. When you get a guy who could play as well as Jack Jones can, where you give a wide receiver space, and yet his instincts are so good that he knows when to put his foot in the ground, close the gap, and either make a play on the ball, undercut the route for an interception, or at the very least, make it a contested catch and make it difficult. It's hard to find corners like that. Jack Jones is playing that kind of mold for a corner, about as good as you could play this year that we've seen in the NFL.
Awesome. I haven't had a chance to watch him yet, so I'm going to have to turn on some tape.
He's been good.
Cool. Bobby, you got safety.
Yeah, so to summarize your secondary so far, it's Jack Jones, Jamel Dean, Cam Curl, and Antoine Winfield Jr. So I'm going to ask you about Antoine Winfield Jr. So no, I notice you have two Bucs players right now in your secondary with him and Jamel Dean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are those homer picks, or you just really don't believe in P.J. Walker that much?
Well, they let P.J. Walker throw in front of the line of scrimmage one time, I feel like, last week. No, it wasn't. They didn't let him throw past the line of scrimmage one time, but I think he completed one pass beyond the line of scrimmage last week. And for as much as the Bucs defense has been struggling, Jamel Dean has been good. I think Carlton Davis is probably going to play on DJ Moore for most of the game, because they're okay with shadowing him in different places. With Robbie Anderson gone, who's wide receiver 2 for the Panthers? What, Terrace Marshall? Terrace Marshall's probably not going to be Jamel Dean. Jamel Dean's been doing a lot longer than Terrace Marshall has. So there's not a lot of threat from the wide receiver 2 position from Jamel Dean. Therefore, I also have a lot of faith in what the Bucs are going to do with their safeties. Early on in the year, how they were deploying their safeties was a thing of art. And Todd Bowles has always been really good about that over the last couple of years. Now, Logan Ryan's hurt, so that kind of hurts the rotation of Antoine Winfield Jr., Logan Ryan, and also Mike Edwards. But they'll throw Keanu Neal, the veteran, in there, and I think that he'll be part of that three-man rotation. And I think it really is going to free Antoine Winfield Jr. up to do a lot of different things. He's been a slot defender at times. He's a fantastic blitzer. I think that they're going to have him come off the edge as a blitzer quite a bit in this upcoming game, which anytime that's the case, his grade normally gets a bump up because he's great at doing it. So I think he's almost a guaranteed pressure every time he does that. And I don't really find a lot of threats in that downfield passing game. Like, I don't think there's going to be a massive bomb that Antoine Winfield Jr. is going to give up. I'm not really afraid of the tight end threat where he might be matched up against somebody that physically dominates him like that. So it's just one of those things where it's been an up and down year for Winfield Jr., but this matchup's too good for him. I just don't believe in the offensive passing threat for the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I think I saw his pass rush grade was like a 93 or something ridiculous like that.
It's crazy high. Every time they send him on the blitz, he gets a pressure. It's nuts.
So speaking of the Bucs, obviously there's some problems there. We saw Brady flipping out on the sideline, stuff like that. In your opinion, what do you think the problem is? Like, I mean, we just saw them lose to Kenny Pickett and the Steelers. Now you're going up against PJ Walker and the Panthers. That matchup can't be close, can it? Like, this has to be a bounce back game. Right?
I thought last week shouldn't have been close. Honestly, right. I mean, I didn't think that matchup against the Steelers were going to be close. You know, it's a multitude of things, and I see a lot of fans and I see a lot of media members. They want to focus on one thing, right? Because they want to have a talking point. They want to be like, "This is what's wrong with the Bucs. This is like it's this thing," and it's not. I think it's so many things. First of all, they are down Ryan Jensen, Ali Marpet, and Alex Kappa. Yes, they bring in Shaq Mason. Shaq Mason is a good offensive guard, but it's his first year there. He hasn't worked with any of these guys before, and so there's always that kind of adjustment. And he's been fine. He certainly has not been their problems. But the thing that always bothers me the most about what happens in the preseason, mainly these injuries that happen, is guys will get hurt. And then fans or media members, as the season goes on, it's as if they don't remember that those people got hurt. Luke Gedeke is a mid-round rookie draft pick. He should have never been starting. Robert Hainsey has never been a full-time starter in the NFL. He's replacing an all-pro center in Ryan Jensen and an all-pro guard in Ali Marpet. Of course it's going to look catastrophically different, right? And it's just like people forget that. They want to instead go, Brady flew to and from a wedding this weekend. That's what the problem is. No, the problem is they're trying to replace two all-pro guard, two all-pro interior offensive linemen with guys who have never started before. So that goes into it. Julio Jones being hurt all the time has not been good for them. I'll tell you what, this team misses Rob Gronkowski badly. And it's not just in the receiving game with Julio being gone with injury and with Chris Godwin missing a couple games with injury and with Russell Gage not exactly being as reliable as they thought they were going to be. They miss him in blocking, man. When this offensive line, even with Ryan Jensen and Ali Marpet last year, was going up against some really great pass rushing teams, they'd keep Gronk into block because Gronk was still Gronkowski. He was one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. They don't have that. Cam Brate's not a great blocker. He never has been. Now he's on the injury report. Cade Otton, he's a rookie. He's not a good blocker. Kyle Rudolph, his best days are behind him. Leonard Fournette is not the same kind of running back that he was before they won the Super Bowl. Devin White is going rogue, it feels like, all over the place on the defense. Vita Vea, man, I don't know what happened to this dude. He is not the same player that he was over the last couple of years. Guys, he doesn't have a single solo stop yet this year. Vita Vea. He has 15.8% of his plays are negatively graded plays, and only 4.5% of his plays right now are positively graded plays. Those are career highs in the wrong direction and career lows in the wrong direction. So the defense, it's not good in the middle. The pass rush isn't there. Devin White's been unreliable in coverage, and he's kind of going rogue. Carlton Davis isn't playing as lockdown as he used to. And then, of course, on the offensive side of the ball, injuries to the offensive line, injuries to the wide receivers, and Leonard Fournette just is not playing with the same juice that he had before. So it is an everywhere thing for this team, and people love to point fingers at one thing or the other. It is a wholesale problem for Tampa right now. That's not to say they can't get it fixed, but there's a lot that's going wrong, to be honest with you.
You made some really good points, Trevor, but I still feel like it's because Tom Brady went to that wedding.
And you know what?
You know what?
That's a good point. You know what? I think you're right. And he's not going to a wedding this weekend, which means they're going to beat the Carolina Panthers.
How big was the coaching change?
I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal because it's not like Arians isn't even there, right? Arians is there. He's on the sideline, I think. He's with the team throughout the week. I don't remember what his title is. He's like under Jason Light, but he's with the head coaches. And so that whole room is exactly the same. Todd Bowles was already calling plays on the defense side of the ball. Byron Leftwich was already calling plays on the offensive side of the ball. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a change at all, but maybe it is. Maybe there's something to Bruce Arians being the guy that was the head coach, being the guy that was the head of all the meetings, and with Todd Bowles being in there, maybe it's a different identity, a different energy, a different level of focus. I'm not exactly sure. I like Todd Bowles as a head coach. Well, I always felt like Todd Bowles is a better defensive coach. Should have said I like Todd Bowles as a coach. I really do. I think he's a brilliant defensive mind. But maybe the head coach switch, maybe that had something to do with it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, we have a whole season still left to see how it pans out.
Thank God they do.
Yeah, but I think we got through just about all of the team. Is there anyone that we missed that you really wanted to point out?
Yeah, you didn't shout out the Montez Sweat pick. My guy, I think, leads the NFL in pressure percentage over the last 2 weeks. Were you just trying to take that from me? I thought it was a good pick. So I wanted to make sure that I shouted that out. What?
If we don't say it, that means that, maybe we take it out. We take him on our team.
Oh, yeah. Right. If it's on the podcast, then you can't take it out. But
exactly.
No, I liked Montez Sweat being there. He's surprisingly been one of the highest pass rush win percentage guys over the last couple of weeks. And then I also wanted to give out a shout out to my guy, Frankie Louvu, linebacker for the Carolina Panthers. Man, this is a guy who is having a renaissance year, it feels like, in Carolina. Through the first 4 weeks, it was like this guy was playing for Defensive Player of the Year award. The way that he was playing as a pass rusher, as a coverage guy, as a run defender. He had an interception that fell through his hands. He's had a couple of other takeaways and forced fumbles. He's been everywhere. He's been the heart and soul of that defense, it feels like. So I think that he does have a good matchup against the Buccaneers, depending on how much they put him in coverage. If he's going up against the Bucs tight ends, they're very beat up. That's kind of a more easy coverage assignment. And then the Bucs they cannot run the ball. They're the worst. They are the worst rushing offense in the NFL, not even close. So you figure he's probably going to get a decent amount of tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage. So just those two guys. Those are the two other guys that you guys did mention that I wanted to shout out.
It's funny. I feel like Louisville's in either like our team or our opponent's team every week, but his name is always on this graphic whenever we make it. So
yeah. Hey,
he's doing something right.
Yep.
Cool. Do you think the trade rumors around Montez Sweat do you think there's anything to that?
I don't know what's going to happen in Washington. They're in a weird spot. I don't think Ron Rivera is going to be there for very long. I don't know Lord knows what's going to happen to Dan Snyder. So unless something catastrophic happens, it would be weird for them to trade him. So I'll just say that, but who knows what the short and long-term future could be for that Washington franchise.
Couple of years ago, it'd be like insane to say something like that, but after last year's trade deadline, I feel like anything can happen, right?
Yeah. A lot. We all love to talk about players that could be potentially on the move for like little reasons. Like people want Brian Burns to be on the move too. If the Panthers trade Brian Burns, they're dumb. I don't even know how else to say it. There's no reason that the Carolina Panthers should be trading Brian Burns, and I don't think Washington should be trading Montez Sweat. Don't do that. You got Sweat on one side, you got Chase Young on the other. Don't be doing that.
Yeah, play to your strengths. But Trevor, we kept you much longer than we thought we would, but it was an awesome conversation, and we really appreciate you coming on. Like we said, you're one of the first people we got to draft with, so it's been awesome, knowing you and having these conversations. So thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. I like to talk a lot. So you guys, so this is going a little bit long. That's 100% on me. So I appreciate y'all letting me ramble. I appreciate y'all letting me get on this little competition here. I wish you guys the best of luck, but not too much luck. So we'll see who comes out on top after this week.
Great.
Thanks so much, Trevor.
Too. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Just make sure you check out Trevor on Twitter if you don't follow him already. It's at Tampa Bay Trey, and listen to his podcasts. And if you haven't left us a review yet, please be sure to do that wherever you listen, whether YouTube, Apple, Spotify, whatever it is. Thanks for tuning in.